Okay, we are live.
It's cute.
Okay. Okay. Welcome, everyone. I have an amazing woman here. One woman who trips me, honestly. Amazing, amazing, amazing. So I will just be taking her introduction. Cindy LaJoy is an 11-year-old veteran homeschooling mom of 5 young adults, 17 to 21-year-olds, all adopted internationally from Kyrgyzstan. She has gained a wealth of knowledge from educating her crew, and there's a wide range of challenges among them, including multiple learning disabilities, giftedness, and everything in between. As they begin to step out into the world, she has helped them to thrive, and they develop their entrepreneurial gifts. And 4 of the 5 now own their own businesses. Wow. She's the founder of Blue Collar Homeschool and has a website and a Facebook group. Let's welcome Cindy LaJoy to the Homeschool Africa Convention 2020. You're welcome, ma.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Z. That's
Cindy
very
also
nice.
contributed to my book, Train Up. I tell you, amazing journey with her children. So touching and so encouraging. You know, I like to tell people that her life and her children have so encouraged me that no matter where you start off, you can do this with your child. You might have a child who is already preteen or teenagers. You can do this. Thank you. Over to you, Cindy.
Thank you so much, Steve, for that. I'm really honored, actually, because I deeply respect you and the work that you're doing as well to bring knowledge of homeschooling and parenting in really different and more compassionate ways to your entire country. So it's amazing to be here. Thank you so much. I have a presentation. I'm just going to go ahead and start. I'm going to share the screen with you all.
Okay.
Let me get it going. They asked me to speak about teaching your children accountability for learning and living. And so my presentation is a combination of preparing your children to homeschool when they're young, and then how do you move through to creating them to become more independent learners and workers in the world as well. Z did a really good job introducing me. We're starting our 12th year of homeschooling, but I'm actually not homeschooling this year other than a student that is not my child. Blue collar homeschool. I don't know if you know the term blue collar. In America, blue collar means a worker who's going to be working in the trades like electricians and plumbers and not going to go to college. So we gear ourselves towards those kids who are, sometimes they're special needs learners. Sometimes they're just not interested in college. I've done a lot of different things, spoken at adoption seminars and on many podcasts on homeschooling. And I'm going to be teaching a special needs learner with autism this fall, and I'll be teaching him for 4 years. I thought I was going to be done, and I'm not. I am also a lay minister and a seminary student in the fall myself. I'll be going to seminary. So just a little bit about myself. I am also a job coach for people with disabilities on the work site, and I'm certified to do that as well. This is my family. As you can tell, my family doesn't look like me. My children are from Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan. And my 2 daughters and this son, Kenny, have been with us. They came as older adoptees. My other 2 came as 11-month-old children. Kenny came at 8.5. Alessia was 10 and Angela was almost 12. And to give you a sense of our homeschooling journey, when my daughters came home, they came home last. We started homeschooling then, and my son, who came home first, Matt, was in 5th grade. We had to start at preschool at almost 12 years old. My children had been in an orphanage environment, which essentially in their countries was more like prison. They weren't ever really taken out of the orphanage. They didn't know things such as like where food goes in the house. They didn't know what food they were eating because it was cafeteria style. It was brought to you. They'd never been in a kitchen to watch cooking before. So we really had to start. They'd never been in a bank or a store. We started at the very, very beginning at pretty old ages to start at 10 and 12 years old. I also had to teach English at the time to those three learners. And those are my 3 children who have the most disabilities due to alcohol use from their birth mothers, sadly. It has caused a lot of challenges for them, many, many challenges. My son will never learn to drive. That's beyond him. And my daughters, it took quite a while for them to even learn how to drive a car. They were 21 when they were able to get their license and actually physically be able to drive. My other 2 sons were both in public school for the first few years. They both tested as gifted. So I have this very wide range that I have been educating by myself. And one thing I want to say, I don't have a college degree and I have no college. I have educated my children as a high school graduate. And you don't need to be an incredibly bright person to be able to succeed at homeschooling. You do have to be willing to work hard and to really, really care about your children's education, which you all obviously do because you're here. Today, just quickly, my children, to give you a sense of where we are at, my daughters have only been home 10 years. My 3 children with disabilities have started their own pizza and ice cream restaurant, and they are running it 100% by themselves. Just like any young person in business, they do have some mentoring from us because they don't know things about taxes and such, but their senior year in high school, we created a project where they built the restaurant themselves. They took down walls, they painted, they did the flooring, they researched all of the products and all the equipment we needed. They talked to investors and got investment from other people. And they are now running it. We have 13 employees and 2/3 of them have disabilities that would keep them from having a regular job. And they're training them and learning skills themselves as they're growing as entrepreneurs. My one son is graduated 3.5 years ago. He has his own business doing computer repair and website development and is continuing to take college courses online to learn more. He also is a pilot. He earned his pilot's license at 19. And all of my children still live at home. And Joshua is in high school. This last year was his junior year of high school. He took 2 college courses, and next year he'll be taking all college courses. So I won't be educating him anymore. I'm kind of glad to pass that on. He's ready for something more. One of the biggest struggles with homeschooling is how do you create an independent learner, especially when you're looking at the very, very young ages of kids. Many of us start working with our kids at even 2 or 3 or 4 years old. How do you get them so that they own the responsibility of their work, both in life and in school? That's a challenge. I think we have been successful at it. We did things a little differently than some parents would. And so I'm going to share with you all the things that we did. And much of what we did to help mold our children into independent learners and was to help them develop a great work ethic and to work independently, both with school and outside of school, because you can't suddenly have your child start doing homeschool work and expect that if you haven't worked on it in life, you're not going to have an independent learner in school. You have to do it as blended. That's what homeschooling is it's work and life and learning all together in one big package. Your life just becomes all of this. So let's go ahead and move on here. The single most important thing to remember and to hang on to is it isn't what you do for your children, but what you teach them to do for themselves that makes them successful in the world. We as parents naturally want to help our kids, and our job is to help our kids, but it's to help them gain experience, to be mature, and to turn into healthy, loving, functioning adults. It's not to turn them into people who need someone else all the time to do things for them or to sit back and to wait for others. It's to help them learn to take initiative and to move forward in the world themselves. And it really does begin at very, very young ages to develop that in a child. It becomes part of who they are. One of the things that is most important here, we're going to talk about the early years, elementary age school children up through about 6th grade, and then middle and high school kids. Starting off right is the most helpful. If you begin with your children at the youngest ages doing certain things, and I'm going to share those with you, you're going to be ahead of the game. But first and foremost, the most important thing is to remember that even when your child is an infant and cannot talk, they are a child of God, just like you are. Respecting the personhood of your child, no matter how tiny, no matter how much they cannot communicate, is what sets the basis for everything. They are not stupid. They are not dumb. They are simply inexperienced. They are fully formed human beings as God wanted them to be. And your job is to expose them to things and keep them safe and protect them until they're able to take care of their life on their own. But don't misunderstand. That little baby, that little tiny baby is all they're going to be, and it's all that they need to be in the world. And then you're going to pump in all kinds of things to help them grow and mature. But if they're 2 years old and you are carrying them, or you're in the grocery store and they're in the shopping cart with you, they're a little person. They're just as fully formed as you are. And sometimes people look at children and they dismiss them until they're a certain age. They think they're just supposed to feed them and clothe them and provide them with toys. Oh no, the things that you do at 1 and 2 and 3 years old set the foundation for everything else that comes afterwards. Your job is to help them gain all the experience they're going to need to move forward in the world in a healthy way. And your understanding of them as a spirit that is fully formed by God right in front of you helps you think very differently of them. They aren't a little adult, but they are a little whole person. And remembering that and treating them with that respect that you would treat any adult with is the single most important thing that I think actually you can do as a parent. Your words have a power unlike anything else, even beyond your actions. I think if all of us sitting here think back to people in our life that really mattered, and sometimes ones that really hurt us, the power of their words stays with us until we're our age and well beyond. And I'm older than a lot of you, I'm sure. Be sure to speak to your children respectfully. Because they are little and small people doesn't mean they don't deserve your respect. Many parents don't think that children deserve respect. And then they create issues with their children because they aren't treating them as children of God, as you and I are. We never used baby talk with our children. I didn't use high vocabulary, of course, but we didn't speak to them with not just disrespect, but in child talk. We talked to them sort of as an adult, but with the level of language that they would understand. And this is the beginning of them beginning to understand words. And if you use vocabulary words gradually increasing, even by the age of 5, when they start school, 5 or 6, you can have a vocabulary that's quite large. Use a bigger word, stop and explain what the word means, and then continue on with the sentence. Kids can develop a vocabulary that's much higher than many adults would allow them to have, because that's our job. When you have your child with you and you're out in the world, explain everything to them, everything that they're seeing. Ask them, do you know what that man's doing over there? Do you know what this is? What do you see? Ask them questions. Engage with them like another adult. Of course, at a lower level, but it's important that they're seen by you deeply, that they know that you care what they're thinking in the world. Ask them what they're understanding, and then correct gently if they're misunderstanding something that's in front of them. But thinking of them as little adults who maybe need help understanding language is helpful to get you to the point of the level of respect that your children deserve. just for simply being born in the world. Our family did so much work together, and we still do. As you can see here, our children helped us at the very youngest ages. I think Josh was 4 here, and he was changing the light switch in our house, in our bedroom, in the room I'm actually in now. And my son was 5 or 6 helping us paint. Kenny was 8. And we literally turned him loose. My husband isn't holding the paint roller there. My kids went to work with my husband. My husband at the time washed cars for a living. They would go to work and help wash cars, and they would do as much as they possibly could. It is imperative that you help we're talking now because we're not doing school. If we're talking very young children, you're developing the independence that will help you as you educate them and they do schoolwork from the time they're the very littlest. You're training them so that when schoolwork comes in, they already have a sense of how to work in the world. And yes, at 2 years old, and many of you know this, your kids can do far more than many times adults let them do. One of the things we did was, of course, we did it alongside them. I didn't order them and make them go do it. We worked together side by side for many years, picking up their toys, modeling how you do anything as they're doing it. You don't tell them go do it. You do it together. Let's go do this together. Let's pick up our toys. Let's hang up our clothes, whatever the task may be. Make their own bed and help with dishes. Sweep the house. At 2, 3, 4 years old, are they going to do it right? Of course not. Of course not, they won't. But they're going to get practice. But what's more important, they will develop an attitude about work that is positive. Because between 2, 3, 4 years old, that's play. For them, that's fun. It's fun to help mommy do those things. And if they're allowed to do as much as they possibly can, even if it's not perfect, what you're working on is developing a heart for work that doesn't reject and find it as negative, but that it's positive to do work in the world and more grown-up tasks. So when they're 2 or 3 or 4 years old, you have them make their own bed. And then you go behind and you celebrate that. You let them know that they've done a good job and they've put a lot of work into it. Because often, of course, at younger ages, they don't even have the muscle skills to do things perfectly. That's not the point. You're not worrying about that bed looking perfect. You're worrying about the heart looking perfect around work. Do not criticize their work. Now, there's nothing wrong with telling them if they're really not putting effort in, that you're seeing that they're not putting the effort in. I'm not talking about that. But if your 3-year-old has washed the dishes and maybe hasn't done them perfectly, your criticism will instantly start developing a negativity towards the work. We need to celebrate the effort. And also, what we're wanting to work at is helping our child understand that the effort will eventually get results. Sometimes at first we will fail. If we are celebrating the effort and not just complimenting our kids' success, but the effort, there's a difference. They're going to continue to want to put in the effort, and the effort is the thing that's being lifted up in the world, not just the result. Because we know as adults, we try all kinds of things, and very often we fail, especially as we're learning a new task. We don't want kids to we want kids to tie success with effort, not achievement. Because through effort, you will get to the achievement anyway. Without the effort, you never will. And so many times parents only want to celebrate the result. And the result isn't the point. You're going to get to the result with the effort. When it's possible, don't go behind them and redo their work, because that sends them a signal that they didn't do it well. And if they're doing it to the very best of their ability when they're really tiny, you don't want to send the message that your effort wasn't worth it. You can show them how to do it better the next time, but in that moment, you just celebrate that they worked really hard and they did a great job. Always compliment them for the effort that they did. The elementary years are really big, and those are the important years for role modeling how to be in the world, like literally how to be an adult in the world. They're more open to hearing you in the elementary years. One of the first things that you want to do is remember that you. One of the most important things to remember is that you will always be, you and your spouse, your children's greatest role model. You will spend more hours around them than anyone else in the entire world will until they're an adult. Your attitude, your perspectives are going to get ingrained in those children in ways that you will never be able to remove. If you remember your own parents, the things you carry with you are their attitude, their heart. Sometimes we're lucky we get great parents, sometimes we don't. We want to be the great parents that have our kids at 50 years old, remembering in the back of their head their parents' words, and that's important, and their example. It's really important if you want to have children to become independent, to make sure that at these younger years, that work is fun. Work is not a bad word. Work is not a four-letter word. And we project that with our own attitude and our smiles and our perspective as we're doing work, even if our kids aren't with us. If they're watching us and they're not doing the work, they're still picking something up off of us. We around our house, we make work a team effort, and we did when they were young. Everybody would come and work together. We would spend an hour cleaning up our house, and we would put on music and sing, and we would joke and we would play around with it. When my husband took my kids to work, he would give them a treat if they did a great job. He would take them out for a donut in the morning with dad or something. Work was fun. Your attitude around work will, trust me, it will come back to you when they're 8 or 10 years old sitting at the kitchen table doing their schoolwork. The work you do in front of them is about attitude and about heart. We would often use a timer and make a race out of getting things done, because what kid doesn't want to beat their parent at doing something, right? So then you create the fun around getting work done. I bet I can get this done faster than you can. And then the kids said, oh yeah, I'll show you, Mom. And what you just did was get them engaged in doing work, and that it's positive. And then, of course, we're back to complimenting the effort. You can also really point to when you see improvement in something, you must note it. You have to lift that up. If a child has struggled to do a task around the house, and we're talking sometimes housework, but at this stage in elementary school, it might be math, it might be reading. When you start seeing a real improvement, as soon as you can, name that for them. Pull that out and lift that up so they can see that you are noting that they're doing good. In the grades from like kindergarten through 6th grade, kids want to please their parents. They want desperately for you to be pleased, and they want you to see the little changes that they're making. But it's important not to give false compliments. Then the power of your true compliment doesn't come across. Many parents think that if they just tell their child over and over again how wonderful they are, how great they are, that they're building self-esteem. That doesn't work. Kids know that they haven't done a great job. You do. Your children know too. And if they get complimented for half effort, what are you going to get? Half effort. It's all you're going to get. So it's really important to remember that the compliment has to be authentic. If it's specific, it sits inside that child even more because you noticed that much more, the details of their life, which are important to them. I want to give you an example in our house. And this was when my children were actually older. They were like 10 to 14. We, of course, we have a dishwasher and a dishwashing machine. And we were doing, school at the kitchen table. That's where we gathered every day. And none of us wanted to empty the dishwasher. And it always sat for too long, and then lunch dishes would sit there and we'd need to empty. One of those little silly tasks. And one morning I said, this is kind of ridiculous that we are all putting off this simple task. How fast do you think we can get this done? And we all raced to the dishwasher, and we started putting dishes away, and then they started joking, and we looked at the clock, and I literally timed. I said, hurry up, let's do it. Let's see how fast. And this is 10 to 14 years old. And in 3.5 minutes, we had emptied the dishwasher. And then we all stood back and laughed about how much we had put off this simple little task every single day, and it became a thing. And from that point on, Suddenly the dishwasher got emptied by everybody very quickly. It changed the entire tone to do something simple like make it a race and make it fun. And then point and joke at ourselves and myself about how silly I had been about something so stupid. These are the kinds of things that you bring yourself together and you make yourself a team as a family, whether you have one child or five children as we did, or 10 as some have. You're a team. You and your kids are a team together. You're working together in the world. We literally call our family, and have for years, Team LaJoy. When I went to adopt our children, someone even bought us shirts that had on the back, Team LaJoy, and my whole family wore them as we got on the airplane to go get my daughters. When you begin to think of yourself as a team instead of individuals, and you're pulling together, what does that make you? It makes you the biggest cheerleader of your family team. And that is your job. Your job is to be the cheerleader and sometimes the coach who says, wait a second, we have to improve. And that's part of your job. The experiences around work around the home are the things that are going to pay off handsomely for you when you begin homeschooling. If you have developed a positive attitude toward work, school is work for kids. That is the work that they do for 13 years and beyond if they go on to other education. If you can use the other tasks in your life to train them, school will be a breeze. It will be very, very easy. You won't have kids who say, I don't want to do it, because you've already developed a happy, healthy attitude about work in all kinds of other areas. And remember, if you have a bad attitude about work, I can guarantee you your children will too. If you grumble about having to do tasks, your kids are watching you all the time, even if they don't know that they're really intently watching you. They're still picking up off of you, whatever you're sending out about, your attitude about something. You really are your kid's best role model. A really important thing to remember that kind of goes against being a parent is you have to let them struggle. You cannot save them from making mistakes and screwing things up. And especially when they're little, we want to rush in and say, oh, let me show you how to do that. Let me fix that for you. Until they get to the point where the struggle is beginning to frustrate them too much. And you can see they're starting to get to a point where they're going to get a lot of animosity developed against a task. Let them struggle to figure it out. That's how they learn and grow. That's the work of a child, is to try new things, and it doesn't work, well, I can try another task. The way that they will do well with their schoolwork is if they've learned to try and screw up and try again and then succeed. And when you take away the opportunity to struggle, you're taking away the opportunity to learn. And letting them make mistakes and learn from the mistakes is how they grow into more independent people, and don't turn around and instantly say, hey, mom, fix this for me. If you don't want to deal with that in 5th grade, when they're 3 and they're trying to get something into a box and it doesn't work, let them keep trying and sit back and cheerlead. You do need to be empathetic. You do want to say, I'm so sorry you made that mistake. How do you think you can fix that next time? Then let it sit. Let them work with that in their head for a moment. If they really can't figure out how they would fix it, then you could say, well, I wonder if you would try this if that would work. Did you try that? Or, if I did that, I might have done it this way. Maybe you could try that next time. But don't provide the answer first. Again, you're trying to create not just independent actions, but independent thinking. And that really does start at very young ages. If you supply the answer every time your child struggles with something, you've taught them that they can't figure it out on their own. Another important thing is never, never tell your child, I told you so. I told you so. Told you you'd fail. Or I told you to do it the other way. You don't like that. I don't like that. I think we've all had adults who do that to us. Maybe we even had parents who did it to us. That's the best way to create resentment for your child, between you and your child, to have resentment in your relationship. Don't taunt your children. Don't make fun of their effort that failed. Most good parents don't, but some parents still struggle with that because maybe they were parented that way. And we tend to go to default to the way we were parented. Some of us had parents who struggled to parent well or kindly, and you can change that by doing this differently. If your child has made a mistake in the past, do not keep bringing it up. Don't constantly remind them and throw up in their face how they failed or how they were wrong. Again, it's all about reminding yourself your child is a little person just like you. If you wouldn't want someone speaking to you this way, don't do that to your children. What happens is you create this tension between you because your children get hurt, and they have a right to when we do that. We don't want that. And yet sometimes we can't stop ourselves from saying those things. And I've done it, but I tried to catch myself when I did. You're trying to develop a heart and a relationship between the two of you as well, not just the independent thinking, but the relationship. And if you are going to, at 5 or 6 years old, remind them of their mistakes and their failings, they will never come to you at 15 when it's a really big, important problem. They just won't. It's hard when your children are really young to imagine them at the ages my kids are. But everything you do is creating the child you will be dealing with at that age. Every single step, you're building your 15-year-old. You're crafting that 15-year-old. The things you do when they're 5 will directly impact who you are parenting and your challenges 10 years later. And the stakes are very big at 15 or 20. Once you do have to correct your children, you've done so, you are done. Offer them the same grace that God offers us. Always. Always. I literally tell my children after we've had a moment or an argument or something has happened and I've had to reprimand them, I have told them, you know, when you leave this table, I will not mention this again. It's done. If you hear me and you correct the behavior, I will never bring it up again. We're finished. I won't leave this table and be mad at you. I won't have an attitude. But then I added, and I expect you to behave the same. I expect you to not be angry with me because when we're done, it's done. You've heard me. I've been heard. You're going to fix it. Let's move on. Then you create in them a person who can hear correction because they know they'll hear it once and they're not going to be nagged later and they're not going to be hearing that 35 times. They can know that they're forgiven. We all need to be forgiven. We know that. Offer your children the grace that you have been offered in the world. Again, I just keep reinforcing, treat your children as you would like to be treated. It's really not hard, but it tends to seem to be hard for some parents to look at their child and see themselves in the face of their child. One thing I would add on the last one is when your child speaks to you disrespectfully, you tell them, I will hear you when you lower your voice. I can't hear you when you're yelling loud. My brain doesn't want to hear that. Or when you're saying bad things to me, I just can't even hear it. And then when they manage to bring in some self-control, then you lean in and say, oh, wow, I can really hear you now. Thank you for that. And then you're ingraining them that yelling and screaming and using bad language isn't going to get them anywhere. You're training them for that. And even when your children are very young, you can let them suffer the consequences of making a mistake. For example, my son loved library books. And when he was in public school, they had library day. And he had a book at home. And we were halfway in the car driving to school and he forgot his book. And he was first grade. So he was 6. And I'm looking in the rearview mirror and I see Matt sitting there and he's, oh, Mom, I forgot my library book and it's library day. And I thought, okay, this is one of those moments. And I looked at him and said, I'm so sorry you did that. I know that's going to be sad when everybody goes to the library and you're not going to have your book. And I just let it sit there. And I could tell he thought I was going to turn around and drive home and get his book. And he didn't really know what to say to that. And I said, I bet next time you remember it, huh? And then he got a grin on his face. He goes, yeah, I guess so. And he knew that he was going to have to suffer being in the library and not being able to get a new book. But that next time he never forgot his book again. You can't save your kids from the little disappointments. Let them feel them, let them grow through those. If you want to create someone who's independent, don't save them on the little things, and then you won't have to save them on the big things. When it comes to creating independence, even when they're little, you cannot micromanage the schoolwork or the housework. You can't go next to them and have them do every little thing exactly the way you want to. You can't correct every little thing that they do. That's the best way to damage their soul. You're not about damaging their soul, you're about building their soul. Let your kids know by your attitude and your words that even if it's something new, you have great sense of confidence that they're going to be able to do it. Even if you don't know if they can, you want to ingrain in them that they can accomplish anything that they set their mind to. It's why my son studied for his pilot's license at 17. It's why my kids have been able to own businesses and they are running it completely by themselves at 20 and 21 with disabilities that include things like I only do second grade math, I stutter on the phone, I cannot hear people and get the correct words. My kids have really, really big disabilities from alcohol damage to their brain. Together, the three of them make a really good team, but individually, they each need to know that they can do things. They don't have to have somebody come behind them and fix it. And part of that confidence to even try something like that is started when they're young, and you tell them, I know you can ride that bike. I know you can learn this harder math. There's no doubt. It'll be hard work, but you can do that. Always express confidence and their ability to accomplish the big things in the world. And then without going too far, because parents can go too far, set a really high standard. And again, set the standard for the effort and the work ethic. Because they're going to try all kinds of things if you're doing your job well that they're going to fail at initially. And you don't want them to be giving up when it's hard. You want them to be setting that high standard for you keep trying hard. You keep trying hard. If we hadn't set that standard, I honestly don't know where our kids would be. On the street, probably. My son, the one who is challenged, Kenny, he couldn't read at a first grade level at 12 years old. He had tried. He has all kinds of challenges around language. And I told him, I know someday you're going to read. And I know you're going to read at a college level. It may take you until you're 30, but I know you can do this, but you've got to keep working at it. And to be honest with you, I didn't know if he could do it. I didn't know. He wasn't getting it at all. It was really, really a block for him. But I set a high standard for him. And then we started homeschooling, and the high standard had to be set for me as well. So I had to prove that I believed he could do it. We worked and worked and worked. We went through phonics at 12 years old. He had already done phonics in school. We went through phonics 3 more times. Entire curricula. Today, at 22 or 21, he reads at a college level, and he's been reading at a college level for at least 4 years because he kept working. If you don't develop that work ethic and that ability to keep working, even if you're not in the room, your kids won't continue to keep trying hard and to succeed. And then they can do things that even they don't think they can eventually do. One of the best things we ever did, and this was the secret thing I embedded in here, and it totally surprised me, was, and my youngest was about 8, I think, when we started this. So he was second grade. I had a lot of work that I would teach, and then they would need to go do the work, do their worksheets or their paperwork or things like that. And I kept saying with 5 kids, did you do this? Did you do this? Did you do this? Because it's hard when you have that many kids. What I did was I created a checklist for each student that was sort of vague, but not. So for example, it said grammar, and I did day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, and just a checkbox. Math, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I didn't get into detail about what lesson we were teaching because that was going to be too complicated. But I knew throughout the week we'd do 5 lessons of grammar, 5 lessons of math, 5 lessons of history. You get the idea. And I didn't want to keep bugging them. So I made a big deal. I went and bought them each clipboards and made them feel like I've got you a clipboard. You've got work to do here. This is what they do on jobs, and school is your job. So here you go. And I gave them each a checklist of their work. And I was absolutely shocked at the outcome. They then had like something as a reminder that didn't have to be me. So it moved the responsibility from me to them. But it made me have to think differently. So the way I did this was, once I had taught for the week, and then I set them off to go do whatever work, I had to give up control. I told them, I don't care if you decide to do all your grammar work in one day and your math in the next day. You don't have to spread this out. You are in charge of your work. As long as by Friday evening, all of this work on this page is checked off, we're good to go. You don't have to do it the way I want. Do it the way you want. Just get it done. However it happens, I don't care. And I will never ask you again. They loved that. Then mom wasn't going to bug them, right? But the surprising thing was this. I started seeing these checklists come in with little notes on the bottom. And I did 3 more grammar lessons. I did 8 more math lessons. I didn't know what happened. But what happened was they had control. They decided, man, I might be able to finish this earlier in the year. What I was doing unintentionally was limiting their productivity by telling them what they had to do today. That was the single best tool we had, and it continued all the way through school. I had a son who did Algebra 1 and geometry in 1 year because I didn't tell him, today you do this lesson, because he had complete control over his schedule. He would get up at 6, and I'm not joking. At 12 years old, he would get up at 6 in the morning so he could get 2 more lessons done because he wanted to get it finished. And I told him, you finish math through this level, you're done. We don't even have to do it in high school. And that was a big goal for him. So it allowed him to start thinking more freely. The checklist of the schoolwork, and I wouldn't start it at, of course, kindergarten or first grade, and maybe not second grade, unless they're a little more advanced student. This was my gifted learner. He was very young at the time. But give the control to your children. If you want them to run their schedule, try it. You might be surprised. Some kids won't do as well with this. Some kids, like my children, have memory challenges pretty severely. I did have to say, do you have your list? I didn't ask them, what did you do on your list? I did say, did you check your list? Sometimes you have to do that, especially when you're first instituting something like this. But we got further in school every single year solely because I wasn't limiting them to doing what I wanted when I wanted. And I ended up with a result that was far, far better than I would have ever imagined. I want to say that we often create our own misery in parenting by doing too much for our kids. And then we complain because we have to do too much. And you know what? We do have choices, but it requires you to think differently than I think some parents do. You have to tell your kids, I know you can do this bigger adult thing. I trust you will. You have proven to me that you will. Go do it. And my hands are off. And it does have to be developmentally appropriate. You know, I mean, I'm not, again, you have to gauge your child. But when we say, did you do this? Did you do this? Did you do this? We're creating our own misery. You don't have to parent that way, and you don't have to homeschool that way. I think that there are some kids, perhaps, that you do have to do that with. We all know that there are some children who struggle to be that way, but you can keep working towards more independence. And it often comes about through housework and other things, not just their schoolwork. You aren't going to just sit down at the table one day, open up the school books, and have an independent person. It's not going to happen. It develops in all aspects of your life. We would do things like on the weekends, Saturday and Sunday, we would say, here are the things we need to do as a family to get things done in the house. What would you like to do? And it just needs to be done by Sunday. We didn't micromanage and tell them when it had to be done. And they could control, I would like to play video games on Saturday morning. Can I do it in the afternoon? I don't care. Just get it done. Because isn't that how we as adults function? If you want your child to function as an adult, build to their skills early, and you'll find that you really do have that result. Today, and really, actually, I would say probably for the last 4 years, when my kids were 16, 17, 18, I take turns as a member of the family. I don't do the dishes every day. I don't cook every day. I have never taken out the trash probably since my kids were 7. We have a large 3-acre lot, and we have to carry it all the way to the front. I never do that. I never have done that. I I don't think I have mopped my floor or swept my floor, other than I was gone for 3 weeks and I came home and did a turn. I just don't do it. I don't vacuum. I don't dust. It's all done by all of us. And my children will walk by and see dishes in the sink and wash them. I don't think I'm a brilliant parent. I don't think so. But I do think I didn't do it all for them. And I had expectations that they could do it. That's all. And then maybe I have kids who are more likely, but I have five from 4 different birth moms, and they aren't from me. So they aren't like me. It's not like it was a family trait, right? Another thing to do to help create independence in your learner is view yourself as an academic facilitator. You are not the mommy who nags them and bugs them. You also don't even have to teach everything, because your children, as you probably discovered when they were little, teach themselves all kinds of things. Now, you do teach some subjects, of course. I'm not saying across the board. But first of all, number one, remember that it is your child's responsibility to put in the effort to learn. I think we all know some adults who just don't put in the effort. There are some hearts that it's very, very hard to change. So we are born built the way we are, and then we're molded, right? God creates who we are, and then people work, and it's like a ball of clay, and you get molded and shaped into something, but the clay is still the clay that you started with. Not every child is going to respond, because I think that that's silly to say that. Most will. But you need to remember, it's not your job to make sure your child learns. It's your job to present material, find engaging things, and teach them a work ethic, and then also encourage whatever they're interested in. But they have a responsibility too. Talk to them about their responsibility. Tell them, just like mommy or daddy goes to work every day, your work this is your work for the next 12, 13 years. This is your work, and you treat it like work. This is your job. You come to work every day. You bring your tools. In our case, you're at the table at 8:30, dressed and ready for school. We did not do school in pajamas, because I was training workers for the world. Like, we never did that. And if we did, we do like one day a year where we had pajama day, and it was special, right? You will be at the table at 8:30, and you will have your school books and your tools ready, because it's your job. You're coming to work today. And we really talked about you're coming to work. And if they didn't come in, I told them, you have one chance before you're going to be disciplined for this, because you need to come to work ready to work. Your boss someday, your boss someday, your boss someday. I said that over and over again, because kids, just like adults, have the need to know why they're doing what they're doing. They want to know they're going to use it in the real world. And they, especially when they hit about 10 or 11 or 12, it became more real that someday they were going to have a job. And I would tell them, I'm not training you because like this makes my job easy. I want you to be able to be the boss someday somewhere, not be the worker who never gets ahead. The worker who gets ahead comes to the table on time, comes to the table prepared, comes ready, dressed for work. And so that's the approach we took. I know many homeschool parents do it very differently, far more relaxed. And we were relaxed. We still had a great time. But you're still training your child to be independent and ready for the world someday. And so that piece I didn't get very relaxed with. When your child has an interest, number two, make sure that you expose them to all kinds of things around that interest. I know a family whose son had an interest in ducks. It was the craziest thing, but he was obsessed with ducks at about 12 years old. Well, his mom did an entire school year around ducks. They did math around the migration pattern of ducks, and they went to the library and got every book on ducks they could possibly find. She watched films about ducks. She did unit studies about ducks. But she also had him research all kinds of things about ducks and come and say, and teach her about ducks. Tell me what new you've learned about ducks today. You create an independent learner when you tell them, I don't know anything about that. What can you teach me? And believe it or not, your children are going to teach you so much if you take that approach. My son, who is studying computer programming and website design, has been teaching me about computers and backends and servers and clouds. And I'm always trying to pretend that I'm interested. Sometimes I'm not. But he's teaching me, and I have learned an awful lot. He started teaching me at 12 years old about about war because he had this interest in all kinds of different wars that have happened in the world. And when we sat down and did government, he literally taught my other kids pieces of government because he knew it better than I did. Your children can be some of your best educators, and that's part of that team thing. If you don't look at yourself as totally the expert and are arrogant as an educator. But what you're really doing is giving your kids an opportunity to research something on their own, to be eager about teaching someone else, and to feel important and adult. And what's that going to do for them if they do that at 10 to teach mommy something that she really doesn't know anything about, even if it's about a video game? You can see that that skill translates to being a great educator on a job someday and to be the supervisor, manager, or owner. Let them research things they're interested in and turn around and teach it to you. That you will learn something, but the important thing is they're learning how to do this big skill of taking information and translating it to another person. When we looked for curriculum to use every year and even subjects I was going to teach, I always sat the kids down. And today it was easier now than it was when we started 10 years ago, because there are lots of samples of pages of textbooks online, and you can open things up and really look at the book virtually. I always asked my kids, here are the subjects we have to teach in the next 2 years. Do you want to learn this one this year? And are there other subjects? I always, every year, said for electives, what's something you're interested in? And maybe I can build a class out of it. Maybe together we can figure this out. And we taught photography. We taught AutoCAD with computer for drafting. We taught doll making. We taught weaving. We taught the Cold War. I can't even begin to tell you the things we taught. I gave my kids a say in their education. And then they bought into what I was teaching them. And you can do that at the youngest age. Here are 4 curriculums about math. And here's what some of the pages look like. Tell me which one you like. Which one do you think would teach you the best? Let your kids have a contribution to what they're learning, and you will get buy-in like there's no tomorrow, because they sort of made the choice. This was a really successful tactic that we used. Again, number 4, and I spoke to it a little earlier, it is not your job to cram facts into their head and have them spit them back out to you. If you can create a sense of intellectual curiosity by doing what number 2 talks about, you're going to have a successful adult, period. And they will go on to be lifelong learners forever. Your kids can learn outside of you, but you have to give them the opportunity and the time in their schedule to pursue their interests, even if it's looking at YouTube videos all day about a subject they're interested in. Of course, limit it to a reasonable amount. But if you think the only way your child's going to learn something is by you talking at them or giving them a book and then talking it through, you've ruined what learning is. Learning is so much more. Think about you as an adult. You're here because you knew you needed to learn how to teach better and to parent better. You chased this yourself. Somebody isn't cramming it into you. You saw it advertised. You said you wanted to learn it. You signed up for it. You showed up ready to learn. Your kids can do exactly the same thing. Your job is just to provide all the tools for when they're interested in something to pick it up. If you know they're interested in a particular topic, make sure that they have books from the library for it, or a class for it, or whatever. That's your job. And then what you really need to be is the listener. Listen to them talk about what they're learning and really be interested. Put the phone down, pay attention to them. Let them know that their intellectual pursuits matter to you. And if you show interest, they'll be even more excited. The last thing for you as a facilitator and not a teacher who crams is this is a fabulous, fabulous tool. And if you want to know more about it, you don't, look it up online, and there are many examples. If you have not heard about Socratic questioning as an educator, you must learn this. It's the single best way to get your kids excited about learning. And I'm gonna just step aside for a second here. Don't you love offering your opinion to people? Don't you love it when people ask you what you know about something? We love this. Your kids do too. It doesn't have to be fact-based learning. What you're doing is asking them their opinion about everything. So I printed a couple of samples here of the types of questions to ask your kids when you're doing something. Socratic questioning is another huge, big secret for homeschooling that I don't understand why is not out there. And of course, it comes from Socrates. This is the way people have been learning best for hundreds of years, but you never hear anybody talk about it. The kinds of questions when you guys are sitting at the table and you're talking about something, or your kid has come to you with something new, ask them, well, why do you say that? And why do you think they said that? Or what do you think the point of this question was? When the person wrote this, why do you think they asked that? Or how do you think this applies in the real world? Where do you think that you would ever use this? Do you have any thoughts? So for example, your child is learning fractions. We forget how little our kids know about the big world and how they might use them, or decimals. Where do you think you're going to use decimals in the world? Can you imagine a job where you would use decimals? Is that learning about decimals? No. But what you're doing is giving them the chance to think about, number one, where they might use what they're learning to make it more valuable to them. And number two, to think about something in a much broader way. And then they say, well, I don't know. And then you say, do you think businessmen use it? Maybe they do when they're adding up money from the cash register, right? I'm talking really little kids, maybe. Or maybe when they add up all of their money for the whole year, maybe they have to use decimals, do you think? If they really can't get there, offer them a little hint of something, like what you're looking for. Often you'll be very surprised at the way they think of something. We started school every morning with a morning meeting. And my kids, from the time my youngest was 7 when we started homeschooling, had to read the news, and they had to come to the table and share a news story. And it taught them how to summarize. It taught them how to not leave things out. And we had to work really hard at that. And I would say, what's missing here? And everybody at the table would say, oh, this is missing. He didn't say this. What country did this happen in? Or where was this news story from? I didn't provide the answer. I let them think it through, but I would provide the question to stimulate them thinking about the answer. What this does is provide a certain level of independent thinking. Independent thinking leads to independent action. And you're trying to create thinkers who can problem solve really well by the time they're 12 or 13. And by doing this at 7 or 8, they begin to think totally. But it also worked for literature and learning how to summarize, how to find key points from an article. And because I didn't let them run on, I gave them like a minute or two to share the story. Give me the highlights. I don't need to read the entire article. And it was a great way to use this. But Socratic questioning about anything you're studying, what do you think about that? If you're reading a story about a fictional story, would you have done that as a character? What would you have done instead? Get them thinking about things that are like connected, but not just tell me what it said on that page. That's the worst kind of learning ever. I think we've all seen those worksheets that have a sentence from the story in a blank, and they're supposed to go back and find the word and plug it in. That's absolutely the worst kind of education ever. Absolutely garbage. It's terrible. They're not thinking. They're looking for the familiar pattern and grabbing the word and sticking it in there. You haven't made them think about anything, and that does nothing for retention. Middle and high school years. I actually have lots to say about this, and you know why? If you've done all this other stuff, middle and high school is a total breeze. Notice I'm not laughing. Your middle and high school years can be the best years of your life with your kids. I don't care what anybody says about teenagers. They're amazing. They're marvelous. They're interesting. They're thinking new things, and then they know more than you about all kinds of stuff if you've done all the other things. And you can have an incredibly close relationship in these years. I can tell you this, and I'm absolutely being honest. In the high school years and the middle school years, I never once had back talk from my kids. I'm not joking, never once. I also, believe it or not, and I would bring my kids in here to tell you, I've even asked them if I missed something once because I couldn't believe it myself. My children never argued with each other, never had a fight once between them. Why? Because they all valued each other and had respect developed in the home. It's not magic. Respect actually works. And I know it's crazy, but I could give you adults that know our family intimately who would say, I've never seen them fight or argue, even like have a crossword with each other much, because we really don't, because we value each other as individuals. We have respect for the gifts and talents. We don't make fun of the weaknesses. We play on each other's strengths and cover for each other, because why? Because we're a team, and teams don't do that. And you don't get ahead as a family, as a team, if you're fighting, right? Doesn't work. I also sort of don't know. I know I'm sounding like an expert here. I think maybe I got lucky and had great personalities to work with as well. But there is something about doing this that changes the dynamic of the whole family life. As you're moving toward real independence with your children, and by about 15 or 16, other than mentoring, other than still role modeling, you should be done doing a lot of the work, the day-to-day work. One of the things that works really, really well at like 12 or 13 and on is to engage your kids in true adult projects, not fake work, not pretend work, but real. It builds confidence. It creates a much greater level of engagement in things when a kid knows how they're going to use it. When they know that, like we talked about, I would literally tell my kids, for the school, for the state, for the school, I have to say we're going to study this subject. I can't tell you how you're going to use it. You might use it if you're going to be on to be an engineer. Most of my kids were not going to do that. But I do need to check the box, just like you. I have to be accountable to someone. So just be with me as a team so we can get this done and move on to something we know we will use. Like I owned it when I thought, I know I'm supposed to teach this, but I'm not so sure we're going to use it. And you know what? Even in telling them I don't know how you're going to use this, my honesty and my saying, can you just help me as a team do this? Help them engage in it just to make me happy. It worked. They knew I had to do it. They knew there were things they just had to do. So again, we pulled each other on the team together. But when they know they're going to use something later, man, do they get interested. When you talk about car insurance and say, I'm going to teach you about insurance for your house and your car. And like 2 years from now, you're going to need to know this. Boy, are they attentive. And I don't want you to get taken and have to pay too much money because you didn't pay attention to this one. That starts making sense, right? One of the things that we did that was a huge project, and we did several of these, was we literally bought a home that had been repossessed by the bank. It was a little tiny home, and it was very, very cheap. And I will say we probably did things other families wouldn't do in a bigger style because I'd lost more than half my children's childhood. So I knew I had to compress learning into a very short period of time. My daughter was 12 and we started at preschool. I had no time to lose, and we had to go big or go home, as they say in America. So I did do things differently than maybe I would have forced ourselves to afford to do. But my kids had never been around a home where a house project had been done. And we didn't need anything done in our house. So I thought, we have to teach this. So we bought this house that was a wreck, and we had to go in, and we did an entire semester in the fall. My oldest she was 14. My youngest was 9. And my 5 kids, with my husband and I working alongside them. But honestly, I didn't pick up a paintbrush. I did none of the repairs. I taught, and my husband did the side-by-side actual physical work. We rehabbed the entire house. My kids did all of the work. We used this project to teach how you learn about square footage, to figure out how much paint you need, how much carpeting you're needing. We redid the carpet, the roof, the inside. They did drywall repair. They learned how to replace faucets. They learned how to replace lights. I couldn't make all that stuff go bad in my house fast enough for my kids who had been lost half the childhood to experience. So we did this. But what I also did, when we had to go talk to people in town about turning on the lights and about the real estate agent, my kids went and I told them what to say and explained what we were doing. And then I stood back and had them talk to that adult so they could learn how to interact with adults about adult things. When we fixed it all up, we rented it out. My kids interviewed the renters, totally freaked the renters out. It was very interesting to watch their responses, to be interviewed by 9 and 14-year-olds about, will they take care of the place? Have you paid your rent before? We'll show you the house. My kids walked the renters through the house, and my kids did all of this. When we sold the house, we of course had a profit. The roof on my own home was literally paid for by the labor of my children. They also talked to the person to arrange the roofing and picked out, like, what material would be best and, when we get it done. And then we still had some money left over and we needed living room furniture. And they purchased the living room furniture with the money. Of course, I had to approve, but we let them pick it out and think about the space and what it was going to look like and what we wanted to have as a larger family. And then they shopped. And I've got to tell you, my son at the time, who was 14, I wanted to buy a couch earlier and spend more money. And he looked at me at 14 years old, and he had only been home since 8. And he said, "Mom, is that a want or a need?" Really made me stop and think about how I wanted to spend my money. And I didn't buy it. So it was great. He clearly had learned something about the value of money and labor in exchange for products. But the confidence they gained from a real world project was incredible. We leapt ahead 3 or 4 years in, I can do big things. And that's what you want your kids to know. I can do big things. When later, 6 years later, 5 and 6 years later, when we went to have them open a business and help them, that project fed the knowledge. Well, I laid a floor before. I've painted before. That's easy. I can do that. Okay, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to build a wall, but I can learn it. They had complete confidence that they could learn electrical wiring, that they could figure out health codes for their restaurant. Did they need some help? Yes, but honestly, all we offered was help, because they were things we didn't know either. Some of these things, I'd never run a pizza restaurant before, didn't know what I was doing, but they figured it out. And we did it together, and they had the confidence to know, if this is your goal at the end, whether your child goes to college or not, your goal is, I don't care if I don't know it, I can learn it. If you get there, you have so won the homeschooling game, hands down. It's not about saying that they took advanced calculus. It's not. It's about so much more. Another important thing to do when they're at the teen years, and I'm sorry, I know I'm running over, is take your teen very seriously and ask their advice. This encourages more mature behavior. Always ask their advice. Explain to them if their thinking's off a little bit, but take their advice sometimes. You will go up in their esteem so high because you value them, and you need to still be esteemed in your children's eyes. And then help them learn from failure. We talked about this earlier, but teach them to view failure as a learning opportunity. Not that it was a failure, that you just figured out how to do it wrong, so now you know how to do it right. Don't make failure a big thing. It's not a big thing. We all have tried all kinds of things and failed. If you can help your children develop a positive attitude about failure and learning and growth from it, they're going to get much further ahead than anybody else that's their peer. And we're done. That's it. I hope that you've enjoyed it. I hope that it's been helpful in some way. I have a giveaway here. And this is one of the books that was powerful for me in my parenting. It's probably the best parenting book I have ever read. And I, like you all, I have researched and read all kinds of things. Thank goodness I'm almost done with all of this. But this will be the giveaway for you. This is called Parenting with Love and Logic. It's the single best parenting book, I think, available in America today. It's also opposite of what a lot of parents do and why they end up with less good outcomes. So I don't know how Z is going to plan to give those away, but Z, this is the giveaway for me. I don't know how to, now I'm stuck because I don't know what I'm doing. I do need my tech son here to help me figure this out. Z, do I have to unmute?
Thank you so much, Cindy.
I'm sorry I ran long. I apologize. I wasn't looking at my clock.
No problem. Thank you so much, Cindy. You need to stop sharing your screen.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, yeah. All right, thank you so much. In fact, this is a master class. So much information, so much information.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you.
And definitely I was expecting that. Talking to someone who has been doing this for like how many years, you expect
yeah, a dozen.
Yes. So I'm so grateful. I learned so much today, so many things that you can apply to your family, to your parenting. So many things you can change. So amazing, Cindy, honestly. Cecilia told us that we need to respect children. It's so important, you know. And you see this in her children. You see that, yes, their self-esteem is intact. It's so important. It's because of the input that she's putting in their lives. Honestly, it's wow, 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 wow. And I will encourage everybody to go and listen again and again until these things get right into you, because she touched on many things at once, many things, little things that you can pick up and that will help you raise children who are independent. Please, if you have questions, please drop the questions for Cindy. Yes, we have Cindy in the house. Honestly, I did not expect less. Anytime she makes posts on my comments on my posts, it's always words of wisdom, always words of wisdom. And she also has a group, Blue Collar Homeschool. For those of us that don't really understand what blue collar is all about, it's when children are doing jobs, or I mean, when people do jobs that are not white collar jobs, right? Like the typical plumber, the electricians, and the rest of that. So those are the kind of things our children are doing, okay? So maybe you're someone like that, or your children have that inclination. Don't feel left out, because it's doable and it's possible. So everybody's saying thank you, thank you. I'm reading the chat, Cindy.
Thank you.
Amazing. I'm so excited. I'm so happy. I'm glad I was able to get you in here today. You have made this conference, honestly. I'm so grateful. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. And I love the work you're doing. Thank you so much. If anybody does have any questions, feel free to, you know, Z has my contact information and I am on Facebook. So you can get me anytime. And I'm not an expert. The reason I know this stuff, I did it wrong the first time. I kept learning from my mistakes, and you guys can too. We can all change course and do it differently.
I'm telling you. Okay, you have a question, Cindy? Let me get the question. Okay, how do you not micromanage a child when you need to help them refocus with ADD?
Yes, and I have one with ADD, so I do know. I tend to stop and get quiet, and I say, what do you need to be doing now? I don't tell them what to be doing. Again, it's always about having them do the thinking, not you. And I say, what should you be doing, and what are you doing? To try and get them to reflect themselves instead of provide them with the answer. I always try to get them to come up with the answer, not me supply it. Sometimes, of course, you have to. You know, of course, I'm not talking about all the time. I also will say, because sometimes a kid with ADD is touching things, playing things, tapping the pencil, whatever their thing is. And I'll stop and I'll get quiet and I'll just look at it. Just look. Wait. And then they go, oh, the whole world stopped. Then they are paying attention and I didn't have to say a word. It works really well because your kids want to please you. Your kids don't want to be jerks. They want you to love them. They want you to be happy with their behavior. The more we say, the more we damage them, usually. Because if we, and I always try to phrase things from a positive, not from a negative. And Z, you may know that from my group. I don't say what we don't do, except for once in a great while. I say how we do. For example, in my Facebook group, when people are behaving as people can behave less than graciously, I always say, we here in our group, we do this. We speak kindly to each other. We respect one another. We lift one another up. I don't say we don't act like jerks. And you do the same thing with your kids. If you're constantly only giving negative words and feedback, you're going to get that back at you because we become what we hear. And it may not be about that particular thing. It comes across the board. We literally become what we hear. And you want your kids to have positive in their ears and what they should do, not what they shouldn't do all the time. Once in a while, when you go too far, you need to stop that. It's perfectly appropriate. But it's often more effective to be quiet, stop and stare and just let it hang. You know how we pay attention to people when there's the long pause? If I see behavior, and My kids say I have, and you all have too. We've mastered the mom look, right? And when my kids, if they were like playing around and they weren't paying attention, I would stop speaking and I just go and wait. And then finally they'd pay attention, like everything stopped, it got quiet, and they go, uh-oh. And I never had to say, don't do that very often, because they learned the signal in a more positive or less negative way. So I hope that
Wow.
helps.
I don't think we have any other questions. So somebody's saying that she would send her kids over to you. Yeah. All right. So thank you so much, Cindy. Thank you
So much. It's nice to meet everybody. Take care. Thank you, Z, for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Okay, so yes, bye. So we call it a wrap on the convention.